Let's see here, do we got any agenda additions from staff?
None from me.
None from staff, okay. Any agenda additions from council? Hearing none, we'll move on. We got to approve the consent agenda as written, or if anybody'd like anything pulled from it to discuss. So otherwise, we're looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? Okay. We can go ahead and drop down and take this, Tim in the substation now, can't we, or we gotta wait?
Nope, yep.
Okay, welcome, Tim. And Jade, welcome, appreciate you coming. Anyways, we're gonna drop down to 6B1, and we're gonna talk the substation improvements.
So I can take the lead, if that's okay, and kind of, because there's kind of multiple pieces of this project. One action item, or the main action item before council tonight, is to consider approving the one bid, and then the others were acquired via a quote process for the additional improvements to the substation. But I think before council does that, it's important to understand and go back and look at the financial picture of this project as a whole, in determining how council wants to move forward, and if council wants to move forward with these additional improvements. So, I'm gonna back up and kind of start a little bit of a recap here. So, again, as part of this project, we've replaced 2 transformers, one at each substation, 1 switchgear at the Bush Park substation. We have the additional improvements, and there is a list enclosed with Tim's memo. And then we have the installation cost. Now, the installation cost is, at this time, still an estimate, but we are somewhat confident in that estimate because the estimate was acquired via contacting a contractor for getting an installation cost. So we're comfortable with that cost to move forward financially. So, total cost, including the proposed additional improvements, is $5,162,154. So that's on the expense side. On the revenue side, we received 3 grants: federal EDA grant, a state grant, and then recently awarded, and I am still waiting for the contract for that grant, the state competitive funding grant, or a total of $3,583,255. Now, when we first started looking at this project, recommended by staff, though this has not yet been formally approved by council, but it was a recommendation by staff, to consider at least funding via internal reserves $1 million. And the reason why is currently in the electrical fund, there's a little over $5 million, and that's consistent today. Now, note, when you see the audit presentation, it's gonna say closer to 5.7, but we have money in there from the RDA funding that's gonna be spent yet on the hydro plant. So it's actually more closer to like 5.2 million, okay? So, if we take that 1 million from internal reserves, that does still leave a funding gap of $578,899. So I approached Tim Miller with MRES, who's completing our rate study. And council will recall we paused that study because we were waiting to see for sure the full impact of this project before we start deciding what we're gonna do with any rate changes. So I did approach Tim, and there is an enclosed memo in the paper handout packet, not the online packet, from Tim. And I asked him, I said, you know, our options are, you know, we could certainly bond a portion, because we held off on the bond that we're planning to do for the fire truck and the water main loop half that we owe, waiting again to see what happened with this project. So I said, yes, we can bond a portion of this. If we're gonna do $1 million out of reserve and finance the $578,000, I would recommend at that point a loan. Or what would it look like if we fund the whole I'm gonna say 5 million, or 1.5 million from internal reserves? What would that look like? So Tim completed a financial analysis of the fund, and his recommendation was he felt that the city could easily finance it via internal reserves. And it results in two benefits in doing that. One, of course, is we save any interest payments, and the fund, the financial projection outlook of the fund, the cash flow longer term looks better in the fund versus via a bond or a loan option. So I asked, in order to do that, how would that impact our rates? Because no matter what we do, whether it's a loan, it's a bond, it's financing, internal reserves, we will have a rate increase to cover the part of this portion and get our funds back up. So his recommendation was a 3% increase, and in the memo that he has enclosed, and it's behind the HDR memo in the physical packet, if you're looking for it, that shows how it will impact the rates, what the rates will look like. And he recommends a 3% going into effect starting in July or August. And then he wants to reevaluate the fund again in the late fall. And he anticipates another, more likely 2% increase, but it could be a max up to 3% again. But he's estimating probably more of a 2. So, again, it's kind of all connected. The main focus tonight is for council to decide if we want to move forward with the additional improvements, which staff is still continuing to highly recommend. We want to set these substation up so they last another 40 years. If we're doing improvements to our substation, we feel we want to do it right and get it done and bring them up to where they need to be. And then with that, council doesn't have to make any decision tonight on how to finance this project, but if council's comfortable with staff's recommendation and Tim Miller's recommendation on how to fund the remainder short on the project, per the city's charter, when we look at increasing rates, we are required to hold a public hearing. So if council is comfortable with that, we could also tonight schedule that public hearing to be held in late June or early July.
Okay.
So, with that, I'm happy to answer questions. Otherwise, Jane and Tim are here. They're happy to answer any technical questions, especially with the additional improvements. And with that, I'll kind of turn it over for discussion.
Now, so sometime this evening when we go to vote on this, we'll need one resolution for the improvements.
Yes.
We'll need one for accepting or possibly a rate increase for July,
To
August.
set the public hearing.
Okay, so that's to set the public hearing.
That's for the public hearing, yes.
Okay. And is there another one that'll be needed how to finance the gap?
I would recommend that, just
Okay.
for record purposes. And it's
Okay.
not a bad, because keep in mind, this whole project, especially the federal EDA grant we received, is gonna have a singular audit.
Yep.
So they're gonna come in, specifically audit this project. We're gonna have federal folks looking over
Yep.
it. So I think having better clarity
Yep.
on how the project's funded as a whole is not a bad thing.
Okay. I was just wanted to get that straight here before okay.
Nope, great question, and I
Okay,
think that's good.
now, for council or anybody else here, does anybody have any questions, concerns, thoughts on anything that Crystal just explained with this project? One being the improvements, the additional improvements, it's the time to do it, it's recommended by staff. We're putting this much, $5 million into this, and it's something that we do, can we say safely, about every 40 years?
Yeah.
So
roughly lifespan's 40 years.
Yeah, so it's,
And keep in
time to
mind-
do everything correctly, I feel. Especially we're very fortunate with the federal and the state grant money that was given. And for the grant that we just got in the last 3-4 weeks ago, that Crystal took a shot in the dark and worked on, and we got that as well. So I guess my feelings is it's the time to do it and complete it all correctly. It's a big asset and investment for the city, and it's been 40 years since we've touched it, done anything. The lifespans, we're fortunate it's lasted this long.
One substation's 50 years.
50 years? Okay, but, yeah,
A
it's,
long time.
yeah. So, that's my thought on the additional improvements. The financing part of it, my thought is, you know, we've been very good about setting aside and building a reserve, and we got over $5 million in this reserve. And with the grants applied to it, we're down to about $1.5 million. I feel that we'd be doing the town a favor and justice by using our savings, what, you know, they've contributed to, and with rate increases and different things, instead of bonding anything and creating more cost down the road, my personal feelings is take the 1.5 out of the $5.5 million or 5.2 million that we have in reserves in this electrical fund, and we apply that towards the gap.
And one thing I just want to share, maybe to also help with perspective. When I first started, we had only about 2 million in reserves in the electrical fund. So it has increased over time. And of course, the goal is to build that fund, because in another 45, 50 years, we're going to be doing this again. Or if we ever need a third substation, or one thing eventually is replacing our diesel generators. I think an updated quote we got, we were to replace those in today's dollars, was 8 million. So we need to.
So it's taken us about, with the current rates and the way we've been feeding the savings fund, it's taken about 10 years to put $3 million aside. So, yeah. So by spending 1.5, you know, it's gonna take us just roughly, let's say, 5 years to replace that out of that fund back to where it was. And we would, I think we'd save a lot in that 5 years instead of paying interest on the bonds.
Well, that's gonna be my question, why, if we have 5 million, why can't we bring it down to 3.5 and not have any interest to pay on?
No.
That's
I
exactly.
don't know if we had a audit guideline that we can't get below a certain dollar amount or anything like that, but if we don't, there's no use.
No, we do, it's a percentage, but I wanna say that amount was like 2.5 million. Like, we were like right about there when I first started, and then we worked since I started to build up that fund.
And we were building it up because we didn't think we were gonna get
Anticipating.
grants or anything, but we were luckily
Well,
lucky enough to get
and building up, because partly we have aged infrastructure we're replacing. It's not just the substation that are aged, it's the underground, the overhead as well. And, you know, thinking about someday our diesel generators or other upgrades that need to be done. And that's kind of why I've always been an advocate of building up the fund and being careful of money that we pull from this fund. Because we don't get these, you know, big expenses often, but when we do get them, they're big. And I can't say, of course, you know, 50 years from now, city's gonna get grant funding again. It was very lucky we got that funding.
Sure.
But I'm comfortable with it, Jade's comfortable with it, you know, Tim's comfortable with it. It's again gonna set up the fund for a better cash flow long-term. I think it's the wisest choice, but I wanna be very clear, it is fully a council decision.
Well, the less debt that we have out there, the better we got enough the way it is.
Yes, because it does impact our rating and other things. And then, of course, if council's comfortable with this financial plan, kind of tied with this, because again, we were holding up the bond to reimburse ourselves for the fire truck, because we had to plan for that, and then our portion of the water main loop. I will move forward and engage Ellers to start putting that bond together, and that will have to go before council for official calling of the bond. But I feel comfortable with this, that we can move forward and get that revenue that we committed we need to pay ourselves back.
Okay, any other discussion? Any other questions?
Sounds like a great idea. I mean, that's why are we filling that fund with the rate increases for that whole?
Yeah, the 3% is taken into account rebuilding of the fund, and making up the loss. Yes. And that's why Tim also would like to, late fall, probably November, maybe early December, reevaluate the fund to see, the progression of how it's growing. Because he thinks there will need to be, in full transparency, another 2 to 3 at very most increase.
Nothing's getting cheaper.
Okay, so we'd be looking for a motion to approve the improvements, additional improvements.
Correct, that'd be the first one.
Would be the first motion we'd be looking for tonight.
I'll make that motion.
Okay? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor of improving the additional improvements signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next one we're looking for is the financing the gap. And if we're interested in taking it out of our reserves of $5.2 million, the $1.5 million in financial gap that we're gonna need, we would be looking for a motion to entertain that.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, next we'd be looking for a motion to call for a public hearing on
Let's plan.
a planned rate increase, and I think we're gonna have to have that sometime in June, isn't it?
I would do the second meeting in June, because we do have to publish that in the paper
Yeah.
at least 10 business days prior.
Okay,
So it'd be June, it looks like, if I'm looking at this right.
15th.
June 15th.
Yes,
Okay,
Sorry.
we'll be looking for a motion to set a public hearing for a rate increase on the second meeting in June, the 15th.
I'll
Dwayne, okay? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Jade, for coming. Appreciate it. Okay. Now we're gonna go back up to reports, 5A. We got the Kilowatt Community Center.
just information, no council action.
Okay? Utilities Commission, I don't think we had a quorum,
We
did we?
did not have a quorum, so just enclosed was department reports, no council action.
Okay. Okay, now the next item here is 6A, City Hall office hours.
Okay, so a little bit of background on this. During AFSCME negotiations with the Wage and Salary Committee, it was brought up and it was not decided formally through negotiations, but the Wage and Salary Committee did commit to bringing this before council for additional discussion. What was asked is if there could be consideration or discussion regarding City Hall business hours. Proposed was to modify the hours Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 5 PM, and on Friday, 7:30 to 11:30 PM with a 30-minute lunch break. The reasons that staff shared for this request to consider is, one, the DMV office does get a lot of requests It'd be nice if you were open before 8 AM, so I could quickly just run in and get my tabs before 8 AM. That's one. Another one is, staff has expressed when you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, it makes it very hard to complete any personal errands. Hair appointments, vet appointments, dental appointments, picking up prescriptions. And we have run into challenges with that, and of course, we take time off and we work with each other and we try to juggle things and make it work. But staff has expressed it would be nice to have an afternoon to dedicate to be able to do personal things. And Friday afternoons also tend to be the slowest. Oftentimes, it's, to be honest, dead. So wage and salary looked into the request and we did find that there are cities all throughout the state that do this. The closest one is Canby, actually does this. They have modified business hours to be closed Friday afternoon. But we wanted to bring it before council as a committee for discussion, and to see how everyone feels. You know, one idea was, okay, well, maybe try it over the summer here and reevaluate it in the fall, see what people say. Has it been more positive? Has it been more negative? But with that, I'll open it up for discussion and thoughts.
Now, is this just the office here, or is it,
Just the office
Public
here.
Works
Nope,
or-
they're 7 to 4.
okay,
So and then, of course, water plant shift work. So everyone kind of already has different work schedules. So it's just about what works best in each department, like electrical also 7 to 4.
That would just be this
Just
building
this
alone.
building.
Yeah.
But it's fully up to council. Again, the wage and salary committee did not commit to anything outside. We committed, we would bring it to council and have a conversation and explain why the request was asked. And we would see where it goes.
so something happens, water main breaks or something over by Subway on a Friday afternoon. And normally people call City Hall? Or how does that work?
Well, it'd be Public Works that responds to that. So usually the water plant, for example, they'll get notification at the plant over there, because they do shift work, and we have staff there on the weekend, and then they contact Public Works, and it's if it's after hours, which in this case it wouldn't be because Public Works would still be working, but otherwise it'd be call back pay if it's like in the evening hours.
I'm just saying,
I
how
think
does somebody
the
get hold
initial,
of?
the initial call,
Yeah.
let's say somebody from Subway, what I think that Brad's trying to say is, they identify the leak, and well, we better call City Hall.
Yeah,
At
usually
2
it's-
o'clock on a Friday, well, nobody answers the phone.
Yeah,
So,
you-
what happens?
Does
yeah.
it forward the call, or, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what.
so usually it's the water plant who gets those. We don't know, we don't typically get those calls. Usually the Public Works Department sees it, and they know, because it's water gushing out of the ground, so they know before we do. Or the water plant will notice a drop in water usage, and then they can't figure out where it's at, and then that's when Public Works calls the locating company, and they come out and they locate it.
Well, no different than
So
it
it's
happened on a Saturday afternoon.
Exactly. But with that, you know, whether we're open or not, I mean, my phone's always on. You guys all know I always answer my emails. I have access to the city Facebook. I'm the one that posts if need be, and I've done that in the middle of the night before.
Would it be possible to actually do at least on that Friday, maybe do a rotating shift of having at least one person here Friday afternoon? So, for an example, if Christine didn't do she did the regular hours this week, next week she would do it, at least then we can say we're open at least till 5 o'clock on Friday?
I would need to get feedback from the staff. I do see some complications with that though, 'cause like if we're not, like if we have one person here, I mean, usually again, it's the slowest time, so I'm not as concerned, but more so the DMV. Cause then people are gonna come in and be like, well, why isn't the DMV open?
Yeah.
Because my only concern is, like they said, the DMV, they get complaints there, but the other issue is,
And I
For appointments or whatever, we all have those appointments. If, you know, if you can't take that, utilize that in the hour time, that's a personal issue more than workaround. I mean, 99% of the businesses or places that work, you get an hour, some places only get a half an hour. And, you know, I mean, that's just my thought. I mean, it just, I like to have somebody capable of answering that phone at least until 5 o'clock. Because we are a public entity here. And, you know, I can see it, but I'd like to see what the general public, because the positives or the negatives we hear about the 7:30 to 8 is one thing, but then what happens if the guy what works the 4-day weekends, the 410s, wants to get all his stuff done on Fridays, and all of a sudden, we're shut down half a day Friday? I mean, that's just my thought. I mean, I'd like to have at least one person.
Yeah, the only thing I could give feedback is, I mean, again, Friday afternoons are the slowest. But that's the only feedback I can give to that. And again, it's fully up to council. If it's something council's uncomfortable with, if it's something council wants to try on a temporary basis and see how it goes, it's truly up to council. That's why the Wage and Salary Committee did not commit to anything.
I mean, the worst case, I'd like to see something temporary and see what kind of feedback, if we get the negative now on the, before 8 o'clock, see what our feedback is. Because you know we're gonna get some negative.
Yeah, you know, anytime there's change, you're gonna get
Gotta
it.
get
You know,
negative.
one way or another, you're gonna get it, you know, and, you know, yeah, and you might not hear from the ones that appreciate, hey, it's nice that you did open at 7:30, you know, so I can get there before work. You might not hear from them either. I don't know. We've kicked this around for 4 months before we kind of told Crystal, okay, put it on the agenda and see what people think.
There's
You know?
there's pros and cons.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yep.
the bank, we closed from, we're open till 5 in the drive-through and went back to 4:30 here, 2 years ago. We had a couple complaints that people had their schedule, you know, and they adjusted their schedule and they're coming at 4:20 now instead of.
And every business does it. I know Fagan's close early on Friday.
Yeah, I think it'd be something worth trying till, you know, end of summer and see how it goes, if we're hearing good things, bad things, if pros and cons through the summer and see what happens, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't expect a lot of complaints, especially over the summer, because I'm stuck working at that school until, you know, whenever, on Fridays. And there's nobody in that building but me, because everybody,
Jets.
yeah, it's,
Yep.
And that's why staff suggested Friday, because it's often crickets here.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. Well, if you want to do anything, we'd be looking for a motion, or if we choose not to.
I'll make the motion, we adjust the hours over the summer and then reevaluate come fall.
Okay?
Starting now or starting like,
I would recommend like
5th.
June, so we can advertise
Yeah.
it a little bit.
Okay.
Pull
June
something
1?
out the doors. Yeah.
June 5th would be the first Friday.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. We'll try it and we'll see how it goes. And
I'll make a note, reevaluate in early fall.
yep. Okay, number 2. GAAC and Yes House temporary liquor license.
So this would be for the Granite Area Arts Council and a number of Yes House event liquor licenses.
Okay, did the Yes House, are they, this isn't just a blanketed deal, this is an
No, it's for
individual?
specific events. The applications are closed in the packet. And then also note for the Area Arts Council, it's for the Makers Market and Squid Fest too.
Okay. So when they do these multiple ones, is there a fee for each one, or is there a? Okay, thank you. Okay. Would there be a motion to entertain temporary liquor license?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All those any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Resolutions, we got number 2, it's the SRO contract.
This would be the School Resource Officer Program that we partner with YME. The contract is up for renewal, it'd be for another 3 years. There's no recommended changes. YME, the board did already approve it. It would continue to be reimbursed at the same rate, which I believe is 69%. Again, no changes in what we're currently doing. So just looking for approval to enter into another 3-year contract.
So move.
Second.
And that 69%, that is of not a fixed number, that's of
It's
adjusted
based on the-
number?
Correct.
Is
It's based on
salary?
the- mhm,
Okay.
Based on the wage and benefits.
Okay, okay. All right, let's see. And the second discussion, okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we got number 3 here, surplus equipment, and I see, got some pictures here of some
Yeah,
items.
and note, some of them have already been approved, but John wanted to, just make sure there was kind of a full list again.
Okay,
Right? So we talked about for example, the truck was approved. We had a
Yeah.
conversation regarding the, former squad car that we were keeping. We got Chris a truck, so we had some conversation about that, and then some other smaller items. So just looking before we place these items on auction, final and formal approval by council.
okay. Anybody care to make a motion?
So move.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we got the update of the Memorial Park Master Plan.
So, want to have a kind of conversation here. So a little bit of background again. MnDOT is planning to do a mill and overlay of 167. That's now pushed out, talking to David with MnDOT. They're looking more like 2031 of doing that project. Before, when they presented to council, it was more like 29 or 30. It's more like 31. So, as part of that discussion, there is gonna be a portion of the sidewalk that's from between the museum and the shelter house that will be a city cost. And in addition to that, we also had a conversation about the utilities that service the park. That would be, if we're gonna replace those lines, which we should, that would be the time to do it. So I looked into the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails Commission, if they would fund via grant dollars, and it would be the same grant funding that we receive for all the various phases of improvements we did in Memorial Park, if they would cover that. And they said yes, they would cover both the sidewalk cost and they would cover the utilities. So that helps, that's a big deal, because it's not going to be a cheap project to replace those utilities. But here's the catch a little bit with that. So they also noted to us that the master plan that was done for Memorial Park now is a number of years old. It's like roughly 10 years old. The city's completed all the phases of that plan that was desired from the original committee that put it together. Those phases have been, again, completed. So they said that they are requiring, because right now in the current master plan, the utilities and the sidewalk is not included in that plan. They are requiring a full redo, update of the master plan, including the engagement, community engagement process. There's now an online platform that everything has to be changed and modified and completely redone. So enclosed is a cost from Damon Farber. That's who we've traditionally been working for in all of our phases. The original updating of the master plan, they're the most familiar with our park. For a cost of a little over 42, it's 42,000, hang on, I have the whole, 42,510. So, at some point, whether council wants to, you know, update anything in that park and utilize grant funding for anything. I'm not talking just the sidewalk and the utilities. This process has to be done. So essentially, we don't have a choice but to do this process. Now, what I recommend is, because the MnDOT project is not happening until like 2030, 2031, but I at least want a 2-year try to get this grant funding, because you're not always guaranteed to get the grant on the first year. You want to always try to plan for 2 years if you can. So I'm thinking, if council's okay with it, we budget for this in year 27. And when I say budget, I want to budget half, and then I even want to go as far as budgeting the other half in probably 28 and recapture it, so that way we're not raising the levy for $42,000 to pay for this. It's at least less, and it's going to be less of an impact. But we complete the plan in 27. We pull from reserves the other half and then pay ourselves back in 28 is what we do. And then we have 28, 29, or even 29, 20, 30 to submit the grant. Because once we get these grants, I believe they're 3-year that we can do the project. So that was kind of my idea, but again, fully up to council, what council wants to do. Again, we don't have to do it, but I know anything we do in that park, we need to have an updated plan, so I think it's a matter of time. We can pull it out of reserves in the general fund and start it now, or we can do kind of a financing way of doing it.
Doing it now, is that too early to, or we basically have to have it done now to work on getting the grant stuff? I'm just saying, I don't want this redone, and then it's already too old by the time we get to 2030, 2031.
I did, great question, and I asked that too, and no. Part of what weighed in their decision that the current one is too old is because of all the phases. We basically completed that plan, what we wanted to do, it's done. So if we did it, you know, even now, when we're looking at the project 31, we're okay.
Kind of, yeah, instead of it being too old, it's just completed.
Well, they
More
did
or
note
less.
it was like over 10 years when it started.
But-
So
but
they did
also
note
it's
the
completed.
age, but it's completed too.
Yeah, it's completed.
It's completed.
Kind of nice to get it on budget for the 2 years, like you were saying. At least we're planning ahead for it based on the budget, and then we can go from there.
I'm trying to figure out how to finance it with the least impact as possible to the levy.
Yeah,
But I also know that if we're gonna replace those utilities, that's probably gonna be $1 million project. That's not going to be a cheap.
here's what lays underneath there for everybody. It's a water line that lays underneath there.
And sewer. There's sewer, it splits off though towards once it gets in the park, but both of them run under the sidewalk.
Okay,
Yeah.
but,
So we update this master plan. Can we start adding more ideas,
That's exactly part of the process. yeah.
additional beyond, you know,
Yep.
just the election?
So it's starting the planning of what does the city now want to do for future phases?
So like work on that pond and other stuff that we
Yep,
talked about before but haven't done.
yep.
and really without this project with the state, we're kind of to that point anyways, where you're gonna have to sit down and reevaluate and come up with a new,
Yep.
you know, 6, 7
And
projects or whatever over
part-
the next 10 years.
And
15 years.
full transparency, part of the reason why we've kind of sat quiet the last few years is because, I mean, the commission also made it very clear, you guys have been awarded 5 phases. You know, it's time to let the money go to other parks. So we kind of purposely took a little bit of a break too. But yeah, in order to get any more grant funding, they're requiring us.
Spend the money to get the free money.
Yep,
Yes.
but
Gotta spend a
our
little to
past
get a lot.
history and, you know, since for 22 years or whatever, it's proven, you know, to be a very good investment.
Yeah.
And to be proactive and be ahead of things.
Yeah, 'cause for all the phases in Memorial Park, I wanna say, we paid like 300-some thousand and we got over 3 million. I wanna say, and granted, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so don't quote me on that, but roughly.
So, what you're looking for here is just a motion to update start to update the master plan? And-
Council wants to move forward of just adding it, kind of the financing plan. The council doesn't need to act on
Okay.
anything, I'm just looking on feedback. I still put it under resolutions just in case council felt, you felt, well, let's just pull it out of reserves and get this done. And then pay ourselves back over the next 2 years. That's also something we can do. But I would recommend at least waiting a year. I think we're okay. I mean, again, the MinDOT project isn't gonna happen.
You're looking at a 27 budget of half and then 28 budget?
And paying ourselves back, yeah. And then either doing the master plan in 27 or 28. I think either one would be fine.
I'd make that, that we budgeted for 27 and 28 and pay ourselves back on the 28th and get the master plan done after the first year of budget.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now we got the airport runway light project.
So council will recall this was approved. We did get a funding letter from the state. It's funded at 90%, or it's funded by the state at $975,000 and estimated city share of a little over $100,000. The city's portion is budgeted. Here's the tricky part, because originally when council approved this, the cost was less. We do have the full city match budgeted, but what happened was, because of the tariffs, there were tariffs and each lighting component went up in cost. So MinDOT, what they set aside for funding when they first committed to funding this project is only like, if I recall, it's like 700 and some thousand versus the 900. So what MinDOT advised is they say, go move forward, bid out the project, see what it looks like. We'll attempt to find some additional funds. If not, we'll split the project up into phases. And that's probably more of likely what at least the airport commission thinks is probably gonna happen with this project. But at this point in time, member council approved for Bolton and Mink to do all the design and engineering work, so that's been done. So this would now be formally bidding it out, with roughly bids received at the end of May and construction starting in the fall of '26. But depending on how the bids come in, it may be one big project or split into 2 phases to be completed over a 2-year period.
And then how would we do bids on that then?
Silas thinks that we could still do a singular bid and see where it comes in, and then work directly with the awarded contractor on how to do the phasing over a 2-year.
If it happens,
If it happens that way, we don't know 100%, because I know the state is well aware that some of these projects have gone up in costs, because of that, the tariffs, and I know they're trying to work through that too. And there is an enclosed memo from Silas as well.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Would anybody like to make a resolution?
I'll make a resolution to send out bids for the project.
Okay.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, great, thanks. Streetscape sidewalk project update.
Okay, so shared with council, last time we talked about this project is we were looking at a revised budget, and a copy of the proposed revised budget is proposed, and I'm gonna walk through it, just because I think it's important for everyone to understand. If council approves this, the next step would be submitting it to deed for approval before we can move further. Obviously, they are aware the sidewalk portion, which is the largest portion of this project, was already bid out. We know the results of that. And again, because that came under, is what resulted in a reevaluation of the full budget. So what does that look like? So for the sidewalk portion, we did get the cost of that. Again, BG Omnison got that, $399,558. We approved the additional expansion in terms of the scope of work for an additional $30,412, or a total of $429,970. Included as part of the grant was to add some natural decorative stone benches or natural stone seating over by the former City Hall site. The original grant called for 6 to 8. After reevaluating with Public Works and given the land topography there and there's some sloping, they felt it was more appropriate for 4. And we have a quote from Granite Hardware on some nice decorative stone benches. That comes in a little over, or just under $5,000. We also have in there budgeted for trees removed and trees planted. Now, the trees removed was actually included as the cost, in the cost with the large bid with Omnison. So that's taken care of. That was actually part of that. So what we lean towards is modifying and allocating $2,000 to help fill some of the plants over a 2-year period. So getting a couple, or we talked about the ornamental trees, putting in some of the planters, so helping with some of those costs. And then with ordering more decorative planters, Public Works felt, and others from the original committee, well, the planters that we currently have beautiful mosaic work done, completed, and it would be nice for them to match. So I did approach Tamara, who said that she would be willing to do the other 7, or the new 7 if they're purchased. So between supplies and a very small artist stipend, that comes to $6,300. Decorative garbage cans, originally in the grant, initially was 10. We got a quote for 10. A lot higher than originally budgeted, $11,690 versus a little over $3,000. So we modified that. We had in the original grant some more bike tie-ups / tree fencing for what trees that are being kept. We got an official quote. It was Talon who did that work for $8,000. Again, mentioned the 7 additional planters, because again, we're gravitating more from planting the trees to having more of the decorative planters with trees, some planters having some, again, trees in it. Quote directly from Granite Hardware, $7,920. There was some signage on Prentice Street, and by signage, originally this was meant to label what some of the species of trees. And we are still required to do this. We can modify things slightly, but it's hard to just take away. We can add, but we can't quite take away. So we're gonna keep the $1,000, do a few small little signs for what trees, that we do have in the side streets, and label them. Then, with, we obviously have a gap in funding, considering the primary project came in much lower than originally anticipated. So there was a lot of discussion on how to utilize that funding, and again, and I shared this at the last time we talked about this council meeting, but the idea of replacing and upgrading the street lighting along Prentice Street, just in the business district. We don't want to return grant funding back. Those lights are very, very old. And upgrading them, it's an opportunity to upgrade them. They're gonna be redoing the wiring underneath when the sidewalk slabs are pulled up anyway. It'd just be a good opportunity to upgrade them. So, and they're not cheap. We have 1 quote so far. Jade is in the process of getting a 2nd quote. We are going to go with whichever quote is the lowest. But the 1 quote he has so far is, I'm rounding up a little bit, but essentially $140,000. These are each light individually is over $7,000, and we have quite a number here. So, because we don't want to return grant money, and we don't want to do half done and half not done, Jade and I had a lot of conversations, and with the street committee too. We feel it's best, let's allocate the money towards that. We have $108,000 that can be allocated towards that, and then pull the little bit in remainder out of reserves in the electrical fund and do the whole business area. Now, I will share with council, this also prompted a discussion that we have lights, again, that are old, some of them are dented, some of them are damaged. Had a conversation with Jade too, that incorporating in the electrical fund, going forward, we really should have, in general, a replacement program for our lights. We don't have one, they're just old, replace, even if it's like 5 a year. Pick kind of a section, work on it, replace them. And some have already been replaced, like down here, you know, we have black ones, you know, and here we have the old green ones. And making them all black, making them consistent, and slowly replacing them. Probably the first priority would be, again, this would just be for the downtown area, so it would be finishing Prentice Street, because we got a lot of dented and busted up lights on Prentice Street that need to be replaced too. So that's the revised budget, comes to $580,000. Again, the grant was for $600,000, the remainder of that cost went to administration services for the RDC, or who's administering this grant and doing all the grant reporting.
So,
Looking for feedback, if everyone's okay with that. I mean, what does council think? Is there something we're missing? Is there something you want more of?
Well, it's the time to fix it up and do it right once we're got all downtown tore up, so.
And we have the grant money.
Yeah, I got the
yeah,
money.
we got the grant money, and if we gotta spend a little bit to finish it off, so be it. You know, we're pretty fortunate to have the 600,000 to initially start with.
Yep.
Now the lights, is that something, you've already chosen a design, a light, or is that something that we
It would-
gotta look
no.
at, or what?
It would look what's out there. It's just the tops though, would be plastic, they wouldn't be glass. They look the same. We have some that are plastic already, you can't tell. Recommended is black. But it would be the decorative, it looks like the lights that we have. They're just newer and black and not glass tops.
Really, you know, I mean, yeah, I was shocked when I heard the number of, what was it, 29 of them or something like
It's like
that?
19. I
19.
mean, there's way more than you think.
Yeah, and I stood on one corner of the block and started counting, and, oh my gosh, there is that many. You know, but then I was thinking, you know, they talk about, or it was mentioned, you know, this same lighting kind of follows down the next 3 blocks on Prentice, and there's some down there that have been hit and run over and different things. But as we remove these here, there should be some we can utilize and move down the
Yes,
street
they
and
are gonna,
replace,
they are gonna.
you know, some like that, instead of having to, you know, buy, and then, you know, we could have some spares up at,
Yep.
you know, keep some of them around, and if somebody gets hit one with a car, then we got something to replace it with, you know. But
Yeah, and the
I don't know
tools.
that we gotta spend $7,000-8,000 a light going down the rest of Prentice Street when we have these to,
Well,
You-
and to share, the electrical department also talked about the idea of painting them black, to
Yeah.
match for now.
Yeah.
But
exactly,
where it's going with the replacement is not it's given the age of the lighting itself. They're starting to get to the point that it was felt by the department, it would be wise to create a replacement program, because some of these lighting, I mean, they're 50 years old.
Yeah, I like that idea of putting it in the budget.
And do it slowly versus them all going to, and then next thing we gotta come up with $300,000 to replace all our lights.
yeah.
That was the thought
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
it,
yeah.
but
But for
Do it
now,
a few at a time makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense, and we could budget it, and better managing the money is doing it that way.
yep, okay, very good. So,
I don't need any formal, approval.
just so everybody understands what's going on, if
Yeah.
you're asked, if you have any questions or anything, but, okay.
Yeah. I put it under resolutions, and I guess, to be honest, I didn't need to put it there,
Okay.
but I mean, if everyone's okay with it, I'm just gonna take it as consensus and move forward.
I think so.
I think we clearly got a consensus there,
Okay?
and appreciate the update and keeping everybody informed of what's happening.
Do you know when they're gonna start with the sidewalk project?
Sign down there, say the 18th.
Yes, 18th. 18th, and note too with the lights, the lights are gonna take 16 weeks.
Could be September, late August or September
The
before.
good news is Jade, they were able to confirm, because the new lights are gonna have different bases, and they're gonna pour the different bases since we're tearing up the concrete. That was the other factor and part of this equation is, if we're gonna switch out the lights and update them, now's the time to do it, because otherwise we're gonna be tearing newer concrete at some point to replace these bases, because they're different bases. But they can make the old lights work on the new bases. It may look not fully, flush, or it might be a little wonky looking, but we will have lighting until we get the new lights. Because that was more my concern, is no lighting for like 16 weeks. But Jade thinks they can make it work. So,
Yeah, even if they didn't have to do all of them, if they just had some, or something. Okay, very good. So now we're gonna move down to C, winter burial ordinance, second reading.
this again is just the second reading to take out the language of a city-owned mausoleum, as we no longer own the mausoleum, and just update the language. So I didn't hear from any council members to change any language, so I mean, if everyone's comfortable with it.
Then we'd be looking for a motion to approve the second reading.
So move.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Discussion, we got the 212 Bridge mural.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this before council. This is a project that keeps coming up. So it actually was brought up by Public Works a handful of years ago. And it was a conversation with MnDOT of, we get graffiti under 212 Bridge, and it was the idea of painting a mural down there to be a deterrent to graffiti, putting in some cameras, putting in more lighting down there. And at the time, and this actually originally was an idea from the Public Works Department, who kind of was spearheading this. And at the time, our city artist in resident, Danny Prados, was also working on this. And of course, the desire at that time was to have MnDOT at least consider help funding it, or while exploring the idea, they would not, though they were open to the idea and supported the idea, they would not fund it. So it kind of went back on the back burner, and then recently it was brought up again in light of, the various graffiti issues that we've had. And a council member brought it up to my attention too, that it'd be nice to paint a mural down there as well. And I got to thinking on it more, and while we do have in that energy dividend fund for community-related projects still $20,627. So we did, John, and to give him credit, put together the cost estimates, and I did work a little bit with the Arts Council, because if it's something we wanted to move forward with, I'd recommend the care committee to do the artist calling based on council feedback, and I'll get onto that in a second, but going back to cost, and again, this is something we don't have to do. It was brought up again recently by a council member. It's been brought up on and off as an idea. But if it's something we wanted to move forward with between the mural, the artist stipend, the cameras, the electric, looking at roughly a project cost of a little over $14,000. And then going back to council direction that I was referring to before, if it's something council wanted to do and was open to the care committee doing the artist call, council could certainly put stipulations on it of like, what kind of theme would it be? Would it be historical, cultural, natural? And what is an art style preference? Abstract, realistic? Any type of thoughts on art. So again, an idea, don't have to make a decision tonight. Obviously, it's not something that would be done Now, I mean, if we did the artist call, it would be a project that would be done late summer or fall, because given the, the project with the bridge.
My thoughts are 99.5% of the people in town have never seen underneath that bridge. We could spend 300 gallons of paint at $14,000 and cover that graffiti up many, many times, although it's a pain in the ass for Public Works to go down there and do it. Nobody in town's gonna see that mural under there. And we're gonna spend 14,000 to try to detour them from going down there and graffitiing again. And they're gonna do it again, even if there's a mural there. That's my 2 cents. I'm not looking forward to spending 14 on that, when we could spend it on other projects.
Well,
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, but I guess I would give the opinion, though, that if a mural's there, word gets around, people are gonna go see it, too. I know there's something to look at besides just swear words on a wall.
Misspelled swear words.
Yes. But, and again, it's fully up to council. I would just
Yep.
toss that out there. And we've been fortunate too that the areas where there's murals, there has not been additional graffiti put on those murals either. There also is a special coating that you put over the mural to protect the artwork too. So if somebody did graffiti over it, it would come off and not destroy the artwork.
I'd rather see 14 grand spent on the back wall here that people see.
I mean,
That's my just 2 cents.
we got people living under there and everything else like that. I mean, you don't get too much. The riffraff is pretty much the people that go down there already.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if the cameras will do anything besides.
Well, more
getting ripped
lighting
up.
and cameras would help deter that, I would think, but.
It would a little bit, yeah.
When you have bright lights, on you and you're trying to sleep under there, it's not as welcoming.
I get the point, the thought. I grew up in that area. I watched it, we fished underneath the bridge. I've watched it change over the years, and it's become a hangout for a lot of not so good stuff going on. And we got people living underneath there at different times. My personal opinion, I see, if you did, do something, would it change the activities down there? It could. My personal thought, I've seen it happen when we did stuff down at the walking bridge down here underneath. They throw rocks at things until they break it. Then all of a sudden, I can see the cameras getting broke down there. They scale that bridge out to the first column. We did it as kids. They still do it. They're gonna take the lights off. They're gonna take the cameras off. I don't know. 75% of Granite Falls, the long-term residents in town here, I'm afraid when we face them at anything in town and they find out we spent $15,000 underneath the bridge, they're not gonna be real pleased, I don't think. I can see it from, both sides a little bit, but I don't think they're gonna be very pleased we spent $15,000 underneath there. And I don't think it would last, just because, we tried the bikes, that lasted 2 months. They all ended up in the river or were gone. We've tried to be nice and change things, and I realize we gotta keep doing it. We got vandalism that's happening over at the park over here, our new park, and, at times, and it's just frustrating. I think we need to fight it with police force and stuff like that, the harder we can. But that's my thought. But I would like to give everybody the opportunity to think about it and talk to people, and just, let's just table this, for just a month and come back to it or whatever. Let, kind of,
Can't
nobody,
really do anything until they're
Done with it
done with the
anyway.
construction
right,
anyway.
but,
Yeah, and again, I
Yep.
want to be clear too, it was just an idea that's been
Exactly.
brought up a few different times by different individuals. And I wanted to share it with council, but whatever council wants to do.
Yep.
I'm not advocating necessarily one way or the other.
No. Yep, no, you're doing what you need to do, and that's to bring it out and things, and I think council now needs to take it and, let's let it sit till the second meeting in June or whatever, and
Okay.
put it back on the agenda at that time and just see,
Yeah, get people's thoughts and
yeah,
I'm happy to
see
do
what,
that.
see what we come back with.
Sounds good.
maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, anything else on the bridge mural?
Nope.
Then we're gonna jump down to the charitable gambling application for the Lions Club, and this is for the YME Dance Line raffle.
Yep, it just needs to be acknowledged, so
Okay.
acknowledged. No council action.
Okay, anything else to come before council?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Boom, there we go, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We had a lot of productive things tonight.
Went about
Sorry.
as well as planned, I think, huh?
Sorry, you kinda came to that.